Right. Hey everyone. So my last video was more about how to kind of like transfer a lot of information into imagination and sort of expand on really imagination in general from drawing. So today I kind of want to sort of talk a little bit more about that. And so really I sort of found out through especially starting from drawing from imagination that whenever I go into, okay, I need to not use this brush. There's always a sort of thing whenever I start, and maybe this is more about like a little bit more of like the mental side, but it'll kind of all go together. So for like limitations, really for drawing from imagination, one big thing is really the start. So there's sort of like this unknown of when I'm going to start a drawing. And this is usually like the most fearful part, really. And it's sort of like the unknown of I don't know how the drawing's going to turn out. And that was kind of a big thing starting from drawing from imagination to then go into, well, starting from drawing from reference and then go into drawing from imagination. And one of the big things was that when I'm drawing from reference, I know how it's going to turn out because a lot of the ideas are already there, and I know that it will turn out relatively close to what I'm looking at or have a lot of the same ideas. But really, drawing from imagination is a big dark cloud that you don't really know what is going to come out of there, how it's going to turn out. There's a lot of different variables that kind of go into it, like how, especially drawing with ink, you're not really sure, or even pencil too. Like when you're sketching, you don't really know how each line's going to turn out. Your hand might move a bit random, or you might be like a little bit fatigued that day. So the unknown and sort of that initial fear can sort of like block a lot of imagination and a lot of ideas, really, because I feel like this sort of like fear of unknown can lead into sort of also doubt. And so I'm just gonna do a little character that is maybe symbolizes doubt a little bit. But yeah, so I think the unknown sort of leads into doubt because we sort of like, or at least me, I start to question a lot of things and kind of wonder basically, is the unknown gonna turn into something good, or will it sort of turn into something that I would consider bad? And really, these two things are very opinion based, and it's kind of up to you to determine if you're happy with this outcome or if you're more sad or angry that it didn't turn out how you anticipated it to. And so, one way that I kind of found to kind of minimize those two concepts or ideas, one way is to basically leave it very open ended. And I think imagination really thrives when you sort of don't have any ideas ahead of time and you kind of let it be what it wants to be, or very, I guess, random, although sometimes it's not very random. And you kind of let it do whatever it wants, and almost like a meditation or channeling, very like mindless way of drawing. And I kind of realized by doing this sort of drawing, you basically like leave all of the doors open for anything to happen. So at this point, really anything can happen on the page, which is sort of flipping the unknown and kind of just going with it, really, just like vibing with the unknown and turning it into something more good. And it can be pretty fun. And I sort of like flip back between doing this very random way or more sporadic, anything can happen. And I think this is what I found to sort of be like the way to kind of maximize creativity and imagination, is really just basically saying there are no rules, no expectations, and kind of sort of not caring about what the outcome happens, but just kind of being there along for the ride and just kind of doing and going with whatever happens. And then that's definitely one way to do it. I kind of reached like a certain point by doing this where there is sort of get to a point where everything is so random that I almost to sort of balance out this idea want to move towards something not so random. So I don't know if you guys have probably seen like across the last couple of years of my channel, but I'll often go from very like out there imaginative drawings and then sort of go into try to do something a bit more realistic. And I feel like it's kind of a way that my interests sort of balance out and kind of to keep me entertained as I draw a lot of pretty much every day and most of my days. So I'll often like flip back between doing something that has a lot of rules and some sort of almost like a video game, how a video game has a lot of rules, and it can kind of be fun to play under those rules and makes it, I guess, a little bit more predictable, where the letting loose and kind of just going with anything that happens is a lot more unpredictable. And yeah, so I'll sort of like alternate between those two and try to get some sort of balance and play it off a lot of my interests. And so yeah, that's kind of the using drawing and kind of just going with the flow definitely is one way to get rid of this sort of mystery of what is going to happen on the page. And then really another way, if you want to go more of the realistic, or if you're like me and wanted to sort of like recreate scenes from movies or come up with my own scenes, and I like a lot of action things and a lot of things that are like in real life as well. So I feel like I'm kind of hybrid in a way, like a hybrid artist between imagination and very out there ideas and trying to sort of like be as creative as possible and mess around. And then there's also that other part of me that really likes like action movies and like samurai and medieval knights and those sort of things. So really for those kinds of interests, I find that to sort of still deal with this mystery that kind of leads into doubt, and then sometimes this doubt will lead into just not drawing at all, or it can lead to like not being happy and just kind of not drawing that day. Whoops, that was supposed to be a sad face. But yeah, so that might lead to, through the doubt, you might not draw that day, and Really, it's just kind of like the decision of not drawing that day. A lot of times I find is how I sort of feel about the drawing. But really, to sort of go off of that, to get myself to draw that day, it's usually like if I am going to enjoy that and be happy while I'm drawing. Because if I'm not enjoying the drawing, then or even the idea of drawing, which is a lot of the beforehand of actually drawing, then I probably won't draw that day. But usually I'll kind of um, make some sort of agreement with myself or compromise or whatever to make drawing fun, basically. So for doing more realistic, and also it also sort of works with the imagination or some sort of in between as well. But really, I find to eliminate or lessen, I don't know if you could totally eliminate the fear of like that mysterious or random like thoughts of doubt, but sort of I find that having less options can kind of minimize how much I'm thinking internally. And so doing a character, placing his face in this direction and placing him in this part of the page already sort of lowers a lot of the options I have. And also a lot of, I guess, rules or limitations that I put onto the character is another way to sort of like sift through and really minimize the options, which can be a very good thing to sort of make choosing a lot easier. So I already know my character is going to sit on this part of the page. And to minimize the options, we have one thing could be rules, which if they're done in a fun way, I think like a game, I think rules can be very enjoyable, especially if they are the rules that you put on yourself and they're very like self-chosen and not rules that are like you have to do it in this way because someone else told you to, or that's just how it was done in the past. So I think there's like sort of more fun rules and healthy rules that can lead into like really good results. And so some rules might be like anatomy, realism. You could do like historical stuff, basically anything that's like that. So a lot of times I'll mix these sort of like more imaginative ideas with a few limitations and then kind of get like a nice hybrid in between. Because I find the like crazy imaginative stuff can be like, I mean, you could be very creative and imaginative, and then sort of like a lack of translation might lead to like someone else. Like I like to share my art with other people and on like my channel and with friends and stuff. So when I'm sharing my art with someone, I kind of want those ideas to be like translated in a way that someone else can take those ideas and like think it's like funny or or laugh or whatever, or think it's like cool or like an action scene. So the sort of rules, which is I think why a lot of people get caught up in fundamentals is because they sort of sit in this rules and they're very useful, but I definitely don't think they're like the everything for drawing, but they are like a great tool to be able to then do other things with. And so like I was saying before, and then we have the rules, we have limitations, which is sort of like a little bit of a branch off. And I'm not like basing these concepts on anything other than my own personal experience. So if some of it's a little crazy, then It's just sort of like how I'm trying to process this information and kind of explain it to you guys in the best I can. But so the rules and the fundamentals are sort of like rules in a way, but any one of the fundamentals can be changed in any way you want. Like you can basically do whatever you want with composition, shading, anything. You can often pick any one of these, and oftentimes when I'm doing a drawing, I will sort of like pick, okay, on this drawing, I really want to focus on maybe perspective and go really crazy. And then oftentimes when I choose perspective to sort of like, I often want to improve on perspective, also play around and experiment with perspective. So basically trying to group all of these things and make it a little bit simple for me. So if I'm focusing on perspective, then I'll do like a very, I'll try to push that perspective. And then so the whole time that I'm drawing a scene with characters or different things going on, I'll really sort of focus on just perspective. And then the other ones, the other fundamentals will just kind of, I'll just let them do whatever, whatever they want and see what happens from there. But then that's sort of like one way to do sort of a limitation that can lead into less mystery, because I know I'm going to do this drawing with perspective. And so if I'm focusing on perspective, I don't care about what's really happening for like the subjects, because I have this like singular goal, I guess. And then that sort of eliminates some of the doubt. There'll still be there might even be more doubt, since I am trying to focus on perspective. And that's like a very easy to recognize thing, since in reality we're always looking at perspective. So there might still be doubt, but at least like a lot of the choices are minimized, and a lot of the doubt could disappear. I've noticed if I'm doing a drawing and I sort of get really into the drawing, I think that's one way to sort of get rid of the doubt, is just kind of trying to get in a almost like meditative way with the drawing. And then you basically don't focus as much on what could go wrong, but more of so just having fun, or what could go right, really. And then one of the limitations that I sort of like doing, or that happens naturally as the page goes on, is I'll have a character here, and then so now my options for placing characters can pretty much only be in this area over here. So I have this option up here. I could place a character here or here, and like if they're generally the same size as this character, I basically only have two options to choose between where I want to place this character. So it just makes it a lot easier to figure out my options, and that for me instantly gets rid of the sort of where the mist or what could happen here, because I'm focusing on perspective. And then also the doubt sort of lessens and lessens, because the scene or what I'm drawing is start to become figured out. So that initial like, oh, what could happen, is sort of being disappearing a little bit by a little bit. And I usually will sort of have these same kind of mental situations, like pretty much every time I am starting a drawing. But this is kind of how I sort of go through those processes, I guess, and basically just start the drawing. And from here, there is a lot of like discovery too. So like I thought those were the only two options, but I could place a character here, and now this is kind of fun for me, and I have made like a little bit of a discovery. And basically, I feel like anything fun that happens on the drawing will lessen a lot of the doubt as I go. And the more sort of options that lessen will also add into that, and just making it a lot easier to digest of what is happening in the drawing and sort of the options that I can go. So yeah, I guess that's kind of just two options that I will often do on drawings, and you can kind of see the difference, I guess, of like when I'm doing those two kinds, which is one, just letting anything happen, just really playing around with imagination and creativity, and then there's the other one that is sort of like more grounded, more realistic, I guess. But yeah, you can sort of see which drawings on some of these are like either one. A lot of the more scenes that are more in perspective with some sort of ground floor, they lean a little bit more towards the realistic side, where sometimes it'll just be a bunch of crazy characters. Like this one's a little bit more of a scene, and this one's more of a scene. And then yeah, this one's more of a scene as well. But yeah, I'll sort of flip flop, and sometimes like I said, I'm kind of feel like I'm somewhere in between, as a hybrid between these two ideas. So a lot of my drawings will sort of be somewhere in between of having these imaginary ideas within some sort of rule or mixing the two. But yeah, I hope that kind of helps a little bit. I feel like the biggest thing that I noticed from like myself and like artists or any creative thing that you want to accomplish or do, I feel like it's the initial choice or thinking in your head of how you're going to do it, how it's going to look. And I think the quicker that I can sort of eliminate those different like doubt and not knowing what is going to happen, this sort of fear of unknown, then the sooner that I get into drawing and actually start having fun. And there's a lot of days that I will like wake up and I'm like, oh, I really want to draw today, and I'll go and draw, and I just like love drawing the whole day, and then the next day it almost like balances out and the next day I don't want to draw, but it's almost like a misconception in my head that, oh, now I don't like drawing anymore. But really, every time I have found it's just some way that I've sort of like self-sabotaged or tricked myself into not liking drawing. And then as soon as I start and can kind of push through the doubt and unknown, then I start to like enjoy drawing and start to set myself up with like ways to make it enjoyable. But yeah, that's probably gonna do it for this video. I hope that helped or was interesting, I guess. But yeah, so I'll see you guys.